Yo, Smart DVR, and today we're going to be comparing the Pimax Crystal Light to the Pimax Crystal Super. So people have been asking me to do this comparison, and we're finally going to get it done with it being the last comparison of this year. And we've done a lot of comparisons this year. So this is going to be formatted a little bit differently because I am recording this against, a time deadline. But there is a lot to talk about between these two headsets. I think a lot of you guys are going to enjoy. And just to let you guys know, Pimax is having Christmas deals, and I will put them in the description below. And also, we got two sponsors for this video. So first is VR Rocks, vrrock.com. Best prescription lenses on the market. To me personally, I have 13 VR headsets, and they have supplied lenses for most of them. So shout out VR Rock, always affordable cost, affordable shipping. Really no issues with them. Use code MarioDude if you want 10% off, man. Help me help you save some money. Also, make sure you go to studioforum.com, which has the best comfort mods for the Pimax headsets really ever. Like, if you need to mod a Pimax headset, you need to go to Studio Forum because they literally have the best comfort kits, counterbalance weights. You're gonna need them because these headsets can be very uncomfortable. And I also have a link below in the description for that. All right, guys, let's get into the comparison. So I'm gonna do this one a little bit differently than I do my other ones. Usually I go like, oh, specs, oh, blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of bloat. Now I kind of want to get to the point with this one. And so let's start off with the Crystal Light and why you should get it. So the Crystal Light is the lesser cousin of the Crystal Super. I mean, lower resolution at 2880 by 2880. Lower FOV, not as high PPD. The PPD is about 35. And so you don't get as much clarity and detail with the Crystal Light since it is $1,000 cheaper than the Crystal Super. But something I did say before in my review of the Crystal Light is that it legitimately is the best looking headset under $1,000. I also said in that review, if I never got a headset that was over $1,000, it would still be my best looking VR headset. And just to remind you guys, both of these headsets are QLED. They use aspheric lenses, so it's not like pancake lenses where you kind of get decent clarity throughout and maybe a little blur on the edges. This one has a pretty big sweet spot, but I will say that the binocular overlap for the Crystal Light isn't the best to me. And I do feel like the Crystal Super is better in that regard. But I feel like if you're playing flight sim or really anything, you're gonna have a really wide FOV, you're gonna be able to see a lot. There will be slight mirror, and mirror basically looks like a kind of stain on the screen, but you will see it when you go to really like light background. Say you're flying through the sky and flight sim and you're looking at the blue sky, you'll see a little bit of mirror. It's not a deal breaker to me personally, and both of these headsets have it, but I will say that if you have a PSVR 2, then you kind of know what mirror looks like. It just naturally happens with QLED and OLED headsets, and there's really nothing you can do about it. But I genuinely do think that the Crystal Light really beats the Super in one big regard, and obviously it is the performance. So you can get way higher frames on the Crystal Light since it is lower resolution than the Crystal Super. It is very hard to run the Crystal Super at high frames because it's a monster resolution of 3840 by 3840. So personally, I tested the flight sim aspect of the Crystal Light with a 5090. So I was running that 1.0 resolution at full sharpness. So the most I could do in terms of making it look as clear as possible, and it looked amazing. So I never really tried the Crystal Light with flight sim way back in the day when I reviewed it because I wasn't into flight sim yet, but it looks awesome in Microsoft Flight Sim with the full power of the 5090. Now there are 4090 guys out there, and I did run it with a 4090 before on like Elite Dangerous and stuff like that, because that was kind of like the max extent of my flight sim. And I recall running about a 0.7 back then in terms of the full resolution. So still looked really good to me back then, but obviously it looks better to me now with the 5090. Another place that the Crystal Light has the Super beat as of right now is also controller tracking. Controller tracking on the Crystal Light is a bit better because it has the Lighthouse faceplate. So I have, trackers all around my room, but I will say that the slam tracking on both of these headsets isn't the best. And especially with the Crystal Super, you're kind of stuck with it. So just because the Lighthouse faceplate is available on the Crystal Light, I'm giving the edge in that regard to the Crystal Light. The slam tracking can be wonky on the Crystal Light, but it's just more consistent than on the Crystal Super. That's maybe because they had more time to cook with it. And I must say that the Crystal Light is very good for shooters and just lighter than the Crystal Super, not by much, but it is lighter even though it looks bigger than the headset. So yeah, I think if you're a person who has a really even a 5090 or a 4090 and down, I think the Crystal Light will be a perfect headset for you because it'll be easy to run on lower cards, not like a 2070 or something like that. But if you have like a low 40 series, maybe a high 30 series, and anything above that, the Crystal Light, I feel like you'll get more bang for your buck in terms of hertz because you can go up to 120. I don't know what game you probably run in 120 in terms of flight sim with it looking, good. But I will say that the Crystal Light, if you're going for pure performance without having to do all the GPU upscaling and stuff like that to a massive amount, the Crystal Light is going to be the way to go. And to remind people in the PC VR community, not everybody has a 5090. So I didn't get one until recently, and that was only because I had the Crystal Super that had to run at higher, resolutions. So yeah, if you're a person with a mid-range card, I think the Crystal Light will be easier and better, and is honestly probably smarter for you to get. I personally have fun playing, obviously, Flight Sim on the Crystal Super in terms of Elite Dangerous way back then, shooters and all the other stuff on the Crystal Light, even used on the VR treadmill a few times. It does really good. It can get a little hot and a little stuffy in the headset, especially because it's a giant headset with a lot of power going through it. In terms of sound though, both of these headsets kind of suck, and I really hate that because sound is really important when you have such a hulking headset that's hard to put earphones over. So I would recommend either you get the upgraded D-Mask, and there are promotions that Pimax does where you can get a free D-Mask with it, which is like an audio solution that you can just screw on. I really recommend that because the bass audio for both of these, no bueno. And like I mentioned before, the bass comfort of both of these headsets, not good. Both of these headsets are very front heavy, not very well balanced. So you're gonna need counterbalance weights to put on the back of them. That will make the headset a little bit heavier, but it'll make it comfortable to wear for long term. And so why would you get a Crystal Super? I think you'll get a Crystal Super if you want pure power. Like the Crystal Super is a monster in terms of resolution and what it takes to run it. I wouldn't recommend one unless you have a 4090 or a 5090. I genuinely just can't see this running on like a 3090 or anything like that. Back when I had a 4090, I think I was running the headset about 0.75, 75% of the full resolution, which is still kind of crazy because I mean, it's a 4090 and 4090s are strong, but it could not run the full power of the Crystal Super. And even then I was using GPU upscaling and all the other stuff that's built in the Pimax Play, and I was still getting around 50-ish frames on a good day, depending on if I'm playing Flight Sim at a certain preset, whether it be like ultra, medium, or even high end. So definitely depends on what you're running, but I would say if you have like a 5090, then yeah, the Crystal Super is definitely gonna be the way to go because just having that higher PPD it's a big difference. It looks amazing looking at things with the 57 PPD, especially the ultra wide, getting more FOV. There's a lot of different things that make the Crystal Super just a better viewing experience for the long term. So I think that if you have a beefy PC, like a lot of flight simmers do, then the Crystal Super is going to be hands down a kind of duh headset to get. And they do a updated review of the 57 PPD and the ultra wide. So I try to get to those next month, but so far just kind of changing them in between. I did do a first impressions video kind of going over it. And I think that they do make a difference, especially the 57 PPD, just having more detail. But I genuinely think that the Crystal Super is a bit more comfortable than the Crystal Light. Not by much though, not by much. But I feel like with the comfort being up just by a little bit and just the viewing experience being just vastly superior, I feel like the Crystal Super is the better headset if you want pure graphics. So I think a flight simmer with a big budget will probably pick a Crystal Super, and somebody who wants something under 1,000 to go with not even a lesser rig, or even if you want to have more frames, then the Crystal Light's gonna be the way to go. But generally speaking, for most people, I would probably recommend a Crystal Light because I mean, you spend less money, there's honestly less hassle, and it's just easier to fit into most people's ecosystem in the VR community, especially on the PC VR side. So if this comparison helped you, it was a lot of yapping, but definitely a different style from what I usually do. And let me know in the comments below, do you disagree? Do you agree? Definitely talk to your boy. But it's gonna be a quick video. With that being said, with Mar DVR, and remember, what is to do with a VR headset. Peace.